Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today I am joined by the CEO and founder of the Memento Mori Project and a client of mine, Jeff Steele. Welcome to the podcast, man.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. So we, first connected on Instagram a while back. I posted a few things about Stoicism, came across your page, the Memento Mori Project, and it really resonated with me. Actually, I don't think I've shared on the podcast. A big part of my personal development journey was going through some really challenging times and coming across Stoicism and starting to implement it into my life. And when I was like, oh, this guy fucking gets it, I need to talk to him more. What was maybe give the listeners a bit of a glimpse into maybe what Stoicism is and what led you to the point where you resonated with it so much you started a clothing brand?
Yeah, definitely, man. So Stoicism is a Greek and Roman philosophical teaching. It's the teaching of virtue is the only good, and that individuals can achieve happiness through emotion and self-control and rational judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, I will state, like, by all means, I'm not Ryan Holiday or anything, but I'm somebody who does his best to embrace anything and everything that I can to make my life better. And if
Yeah.
I can talk to other people along the way, I'll go ahead and do that. Um, Essentially, what really caught me is that there are four virtues. One is wisdom, two is courage, three is justice, and four is temperance. So wisdom, it's obviously the pursuit of knowledge. And I like knowing things. My wife will be the first one to tell you, like, how does he know about where that planet is or something right now? I look things up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know things. The second would be courage, obviously. So bravery in the face of adversity. It's not being brave like, oh, I'm going to fight somebody right now. It's like, shit's not good, but
Mm-hmm.
be brave enough to, fight back. Justice, doing the right thing. And then temperance is that self-control and the moderation, because it's easy to get sucked into quite literally anything from playing too many video games to, some illicit drugs that will completely wreck your life. Some of the very well-known Stoics, you probably heard Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor. Another famous stoicist was Epictetus, and Seneca is another one. All those individuals are famous in the Greco-Roman philosophy, whether they were uh, political members or if they were somebody that simply was living and teaching Stoicism as a form of philosophy at the time. Their works are definitely out there. Epictetus has a book called The Enchiridion, and it's a very short book. It has a lot of his quotes in there. And then there's a very famous one from Marcus Aurelius called Meditations. And there have been a number of individuals who have taken the book and basically translated it from the old text, because even though you can go from Latin to English, there's still some things that don't necessarily translate. So you get different things in the different texts and versions. But for me, before I read anything, and this is before Chat GPT, because I feel like everyone's overusing that these days. I just went to Google and I said, what are some Stoic quotes or whatever? Because I was curious about it. I looked up Stoicism, I looked up some Stoic quotes, and then there are things that I was like, well, that kind of makes a lot of sense. Like Marcus Aurelius is a couple of my favorite ones. So you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And that's something that was so big for me because my dad had told me growing up that I'm my own worst enemy. He goes, Jeff, you are your own worst enemy. And I always knew and understood what he meant, but I didn't really ever understand how to grasp that and how to fix it for myself. Example would be, I grew up playing a lot of baseball. So if I went 0 for 4 in a game, something like that. By the way, are you a Blue Jays fan?
By proxy.
Okay, cool. All right. So go Dodgers. I'm here in LA. So that's why I asked that. I've been meaning to ask you that.
I should have worn my
Um,
Blue Jays hat.
oh man, I would have worn the Dodgers hat. Uh, so growing up playing baseball, let's say I went 0 for 4. I would be so hard on myself if I struck out looking or something like that. Immediately, like, damn it, Jeff, you suck. Like, Dad, we got to go take batting practice right now, right after the game, right now. Why? Like, what is that going to achieve? Swinging the bat angry, thinking that you're going to do better next time because of that? No. So those outside events, yes, I do have some control over it by doing as well as I can, but like I'm only prepared so much, right? If I'm prepared this much and the outside events kind of supersede that, the guy's that much better, or I just miss something, that's it. So at this point, I have the power. I have to have the power over my mind because I'm not going to let it eat me alive. And I had done that growing up, and I still do that with a lot of things. And like, dude, completely honest, like last night I had a moment with my wife and I'm like, I am stressed out
Yeah.
with this and that. For reference, my job, I work 10, 24-hour shifts a month as a fireman. I'm working some overtime right now. So I'm working, I think 18 days this month. So
Yeah,
if you think
you
about
just
that,
did a
that's,
96-hour shift. Like,
I did, yes. And then I was off for 3 days and I'm going back for a 96. And then I'll flip flop on and off for a couple days until Thanksgiving. And then I go back for 3 more. So it's like, I'm home, but I'm disconnected from my wife.
right.
I am trying to manage this business that I have, trying to figure out social media, which I'm not an expert in either. Um, and then it's like I go to work, I have to be engaged at work. Yeah, I can kind of do some stuff, but like I'm part of a team. There's 14 dudes there. I can't just go off and do my own thing. Plus, I've got to be like laser focused for things that happen and things that are going on. So it's like I kind of got this stuff looming over my head. Like, did I get enough done? Am I doing enough for this? Well, I can only control what I can control, right?
Yep.
And I lose sight of that sometimes. And I'm so thankful, grateful for my wife because she kind of reels me in. She really like, hey, like, take a step back real quick and see where you're at with it. Because
Mhm.
sometimes I'm just like, want to throw my hands up, you know, and like I'll always come back to it, but she helps me come back to it a little faster.
Yeah, my wife's the same way. And there's Stoicism resonated for me in a lot of ways as well from the control perspective, because to me it goes in layers. People say like Stoicism is a philosophy. I never really agreed with that because there's a lot of gaps in it. There's
Yeah,
a lot of room for interpretation, which I think is good for a lot of men because the opportunity to actually kind of internalize the lessons in your own way is really valuable. So,
correct.
being in a position where you're disconnected, you're not present, well, you cannot be wise in that position. You cannot be brave in that position. You can't use any of these virtues from a position that lacks presence. So, a lot of the quotes come back to consciousness. Are you
Mm-hmm.
consciously aware of what's going on? And
Right.
for most of us, whether it be because of social media or because of work stress or because of, things that are happening or the goals that we have, you mentioned you're thinking about all the things that you want to be doing or you're thinking about the outcomes that you want to achieve, but those can't be achieved without process.
Right.
And for me, Stoicism allowed me to focus more on the process of what I was trying to accomplish. But not only that, the motivations and alignment between my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. Talk to me a little bit about your journey with regards to like, I know that you had, the loss of your brother kind of led you down this path. Are you able to talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Contrary to what people would think, I'm grabbing a pen here. I want to take notes for any reason. Yeah. Coincidentally, actually, one of the reasons I chose today to actually do this podcast, I know we were going to be talking about it, and I sent my mom some flowers today. It is 12 years to the day that my brother laid his motorcycle down and that he died. Um,
Jesus.
I used to get really bummed out around this time. And it was for a couple of reasons. One, like the holidays, and then, whatever was going on with, obviously having a companion helps you, so like when you're single, you lean on friends and stuff, but like having somebody there emotionally, romantically helps you too.
Yeah.
So not having that can be kind of tough sometimes, through some of my single stages. But it's like I've grown to not only accept what has happened and I can't change it, but I've also grown to look at the silver lining of it. And I think that that's the big picture of everything that happens that's adverse in your life.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, one of the big things that I realized, and my brother wasn't he was not into stoicism or anything. He was just a fucking cool dude. Can I cuss? Are we cuss
Yeah,
on
for
this
sure.
thing? Like, okay, it's not FCC. All right, sweet. I'm not allowed to cuss on the radio at work. Like, they'll come at me. Um, so when I was younger, my brother he's my older brother, technically my half brother. My mom was married before she
Okay.
was married to my dad. She has Jason, my brother's name. And then, kind of a troubled kid, got into some serious drugs in high school, lived up in Palmdale, if anybody knows the area. And he, from my understanding, dropped out of high school, but they were able to get him to a rehab center and get him cleaned up before he got 18 years old. So 18, he was clean and everything. He started working for a company called Temp Power, throwing power poles in the ground, like for people at job sites and stuff. And he eventually started his own company as a journeyman electrician. I mean, worked his way up to that. So for me, like, I saw that and I looked up to that, how he
Yeah.
basically came from quite literal rock bottom, right, to getting to a place in his life where he not only was successful, had a job, but he ran his own business. And you don't just become a journeyman electrician by pussyfooting around.
Right.
It takes a lot of time and dedication to do that. So there was that. And the guy also liked toys. I mean, he had a BMW M5. He had his, Chevy 2500. He snowboarded and like rode dirt bikes. He rode dirt bikes since he was, I want to say, like 5 or 6 years old. And I remember one time in his office, we were up in his office in LA one time, and I was like, there was an old 1998 or 1988 Yamaha, and I look at my mom and I was like, Jason will give that to me if I can like fix it up. Is it cool? And my parents have always kind of been like, well, and it's because that's not what they do. I would need somebody to take me and do all that, right? I was like
Mhm.
13 at the time. Didn't make sense. So I didn't grow up doing a whole bunch of extracurricular stuff. It was always baseball. And then every now and then we'd go to like the mountains or something like that for the summertime or the winter. And it was cool. That was great. But I wanted to do more. So I asked my brother to take me snowboarding one time. I had been once before, but he quite literally taught me how to use my toe edge on a snowboard. And if do you snowboard or ski or
I do.
anything?
Yeah, I used to
Okay.
race.
So for a lot of people, it's difficult to go from their heels to their toe edge, and they're scared because they think they're going to fall on your face. And he tells me, he's like, dude, you just have to commit. That's it. You got to commit to it. And I kind of went and I pulled back, kind of went and I pulled back. And he's like, dude, you got to commit. And I eventually got it that day, right then and there. And I had tried a couple times before and I wasn't able to.
Mhm.
But the cool thing was, like, we just went to a small mountain, Snow Valley. It was like a, small local one. But he goes, you got to go to the top of the hill. That's the only way you're ever going to learn. Because the way I explain it to people is it's like riding a bike as slow as you can if you're on the bunny hill. You can't balance. You're going to keep falling.
Mhm.
So you've got to gain some speed before you can actually learn how to use the snowboard properly. So he straps into the snowboard and he's like, cool, let's go down. And he just like hits a jib, does a method grab. And I was like, this guy hasn't been on the snowboard in like 6 years, you know? And it's just like that cool looking at your big brother moment type thing.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like, man, that's fucking awesome. I wish he and I had more memories like that, but he was 11 years older than me. So it's like, we didn't have a lot that we would do together. Another really cool thing that I remember is I was dating this girl when I was like 20, and she liked horses, and he had horses. He lived up in Burbank. and that there is some horse property up there. And he took us on a couple of horses up to the back of the Hollywood sign. He says, "Hey, meet me here at the stable." I'm like, "Where's Jason at?" He rolls up on his Harley, just like cowboy boots and jeans. And my girlfriend at the time was like, "Is that your brother?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, it was just this fucking cool thing, you know? And ever since then, like I've reflected on moments like that a lot since he died. To kind of put in perspective, like mentally what I've had to not put up with, but like a lot of people aren't going to want to go by somebody's accident site,
Yeah.
you know? So I was working for a fire department right down the street, and I found out after we transported somebody to the hospital, unrelated, that something had happened, and my whole crew was waiting outside for me. And I was like, this is kind of odd, but I had a hunch because my dad left a message for me. I went out there and they give me a phone. I call my dad on the phone. He tells me to meet him at Charmaine, was his girlfriend's house at the time in LA. And I go, they basically take me off of work. And I got this sinking feeling in my stomach, right? Like they don't tell you somebody died or anything, but it's like, you're leaving work, right? I'm a public servant at this point. Yes. So we go to Charmaine's house and I get out of the pickup truck and my mom just like cries, "Jason's gone," you know, and immediately like, you know, like, okay, this is real. This isn't fake anymore. Mm-hmm. So that happened in the city of LA. I worked for the city of Glendale. It wasn't long after that I was then hired in the city of LA to work as a fireman for them. And I have driven fire trucks, fire engines, and everything past where he laid his bike down. Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting. I don't know who ran on him. I don't know who were the paramedics on the call or anything, but by strange, divine, whatever, I work for this same fire department. And like, if I'm driving past that, I don't cry. I don't get all worked up or anything. It's just, I have a job to do. And I try not to let that bother me. And I think part of it is me realizing that there is indeed a silver lining about this whole thing. Kind of to bring it back to how it brought me to start doing more stuff in life is that I saw Jason did all this cool stuff. Rode dirt bikes in Costa Rica on some very, very difficult terrain just because he wanted to. You know, he went to Italy with the girl he was dating at the time and like was sending my mom pictures back, goes to Tulum and does a bunch of stuff. And like, I'm like, that's cool, man. I want to travel. I want to go do awesome things. And I really loved the way that this guy lived. And I felt like it would be a very good ode to him to go and do those things. So in 2014, when I graduated college, a friend of mine was going on a trip to Europe, just like a pre-planned, like on a tour bus type thing. That was a huge like thing for me to do, like just picking up and going and doing that. But I was there for 2 weeks. I had the time of my life. I met one of my best friends on the trip, my friend Dan. He's Australian. I've been to Australia a couple times now. He's been here. He was actually in my wedding. Sick. It was really cool. So like, I know all these people. He and I, we share a lot of like common things. He's in the military over there, so he and I understand like the militaristic aspect of the jobs that we do. Mm-hmm. In 2017, the guy invited me to Whistler for New Year's for 3 days or something. And I was like, dude, whatever, let me just send it. Let me go. I didn't even think about it. I just went. So I spent that year and then the next year in Whistler, Canada, snowboarding just because I wanted to. And it's like, I really probably never would have done things like that if my brother hadn't had his accident. And it sounds really weird, but like, I would not have had this coming to light moment of why aren't you living your life like that? Because this guy lived his life like that. He lived his life like no tomorrow was there. And at one point, tomorrow didn't exist for him.
Well, I mean, that plays perfectly into Memento Mori, right? It's like
100%. So Memento Mori, I threw around the idea for a long time um, of doing this. And really, it's like the the whole purpose that Memento Mori is here is to get people to say, you know what, like I'm just going to do it. And at one point I said, I'm just going to start this social media page because I want to put Stoic quotes on there and talk about cool things. And I want people to be encouraged by this story and everything else. And I was so hesitant, and I was like, I'm not living up to this Memento Mori mindset if I don't do that. So I just did. Um, and for those who don't know, Memento Mori is Latin for remember that you must die. So it's not this cynical thing like, well, we're going to die, whatever. It's the old school YOLO. I mean, as I kind of think of it,
Yeah.
it really is. So it's like, it doesn't mean, just go be reckless, but kind of throw caution to wind and say, you know what, man, like things aren't perfect. I don't have the whole plan, but I'm 30% there and I'll finish the other 70% after I start. But like, I'm going to start now and I'm going to start getting some movement on this.
Yeah, man. Memento Mori it was a concept that I learned about early on in my, we'll call it my Stoic discovery. I read Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, and I actually used it as a journaling prompt when I was going through a really challenging point in my life. So I would wake up in the morning, I would read the passage from the book. And for those who aren't familiar with the Daily Stoic, it's 365 Stoic quotes and then some interpretation from historical concepts from an author named Ryan Holiday, who's literally everything he's wrote. It's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a bit repetitive, but fantastic. And I would use it as a journaling prompt to say like, okay, how does this relate to my life in this moment? I don't really speak about that challenging time in specific, but it would be my equivalent of what I would consider to be rock bottom, like nothing drug related or anything like that. But it was, the darkest time in my life. And the idea that someday you will die, I was like, well, if that day is tomorrow, am I okay to leave this earth where it is now?
Right.
Can I go to bed tonight and be totally okay with not waking up tomorrow? And it's to the point where like the most recent tattoo that I got, the half sleeve that I have on my right side, on my hand, I have a clock with the time I was born. And then at the top, then some smoke that comes up to a skull. It's like you're born and you're going to die. And it's what's in between that counts.
Right.
And I have yeah, exactly. And on the other side of my forearm, I have a lighthouse. Because for me, the imagery of a lighthouse, we have a lot of lighthouses in our lives, things that keep us safe during troubling times and challenging times. And the final piece I actually got on that sleeve was the date that Liv and I got married, because she's a huge lighthouse for me. And when I think about how many of us go through life doing so many things without understanding why we're doing them or the motivations behind them and how that actually aligns with our purpose, it really makes me grateful that I had that discovery, because I was living without purpose. I was just doing and I wasn't being.
Right.
So a lot of the things that I do these days is centered on, hey, am I present here? Does what I'm doing align with my values? Am I doing what's right? And am I controlling what I can control? Because if I'm doing all of those things and I lay my head on the pillow at night and I don't wake up tomorrow, I got to be okay with that. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but that just gives me an intense feeling of calmness. And any of the frustration, the anger, the disappointment just kind of fades away.
Yes.
One thing that I wanted to chat about, maybe going into like using the virtues kind of as a framework for the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have a perception that Stoicism is about, especially when it comes to temperance. So maybe we'll start there. Comes from suppressing emotions. And
Right.
that never really resonated with me because everything I've read, I read Meditations, I've read Seneca's book, I've read Epictetus's book. Um, they feel their feelings very deeply, but
Hmm.
they don't judge themselves for those feelings. They seek to understand those feelings and turn them
Right.
into action. Is that how you kind of approach your Stoic practice?
Yes. So for me, when I was really getting into building this brand around Stoicism, I didn't want to say, hey, these are the four virtues of the Memento Mori Project. I kind of developed, not like some of my own, but I wrote down about 12 things that I thought were really important in my life. And I narrowed them down to four of the most important. And what I came up with was integrity, discipline, resilience, and humility. And they're things that they're similar, but they really, really resonate. Because for me, yes, integrity is obviously it's doing the right thing when nobody's looking, but it's also doing the right thing when quite literally everybody's looking. Like, where there's that old adage of that kid on the playground and he's your friend, but then like all of a sudden the cool kids come around and he makes fun of you or something like that. Well, that's not integrity, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So I try to live my life like that. As far as discipline's concerned, it's a constant battle to stay like there's motivation and then there's discipline, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's one thing to say you're disciplined, but it's another thing to truly be disciplined. Then there are some things in my life that I am disciplined in, and some things in my life that I am not disciplined in. Um, but what I try to do is really recognize some of these things that I need to fix and reflect on why. Are you drinking caffeine?
I don't know. No, it has no caffeine. Everybody,
Oh,
mug,
okay. For some reason, I thought you had a Black Rifle coffee, like 300 milligram. I don't know, a
dude. It's
shotgun
like
drink or something like that.
7:30 p.m. here.
That's why I asked.
I might do an evening espresso. That might be as far as I go.
That's a European thing. That's yeah.
After my 2 weeks in Europe. It was so funny when we were there. I was like, "Yeah, I'll have a coffee, please." And they bring out this like thimble full of coffee.
Yeah,
And I'm like, "What the fuck is this?
yeah.
I'll have 6 more of these, please."
Yeah.
And then they bring the bill. It's like 30 euros. I'm like, "Oh,
I know, it's crazy. Oh man, it's different over there. There's no drip coffee. It's whether your Americano's the Americano. They just mix it with hot water and
I know."
call it a day.
Yeah, whatever.
By the way, I got ADHD, so like I will just get
All right.
fully
Okay. So
sidetracked
let's
sometimes.
let's dive into discipline because I
Yes,
just
yes.
recorded a podcast on discipline with one of my favorite guests that I've had on the podcast twice. Her name's Dr. Lisa Lewis, and she's
Hmm.
a psychologist. And we talked about I look at discipline as almost a stopgap. So when we look at motivation, obviously there's internal and external motivation. So motivation that comes from within, motivation that comes from seeking validation exterior to us, like, peer support, things like that. I think in order to start anything, you have to be able to capitalize on whatever motivation that you can get, right? Because that inertia to start anything is so high.
Yes.
So for you, the motivation was, I just want to share shit. I
Right.
just want to share stuff. And then you did start to get some validation external to you. People did start to resonate and you said, hey, maybe there's something here that I can keep going. And that
Hmm.
developed into the brand as it is now. But it also
Right.
developed the way you live your life. Like as your coach, I can say, man, you're one of the most disciplined clients I have. If I put something on the paper, it's going to get done. Whether it gets done today or tomorrow based on your schedule, it's still going to get done.
Right.
But eventually discipline stops being discipline. Because for me, discipline requires effort.
Right.
Discipline really, and like the rubber meets the road for discipline for me when you start to embody being someone who is disciplined. So discipline no longer becomes something that takes energy. It just is what you do. So it becomes identity. And I think a lot of the Stoic practices, whether it be wisdom, bravery, justice, temperance, eventually if you start living your life a certain way, it just becomes the way you live your life. So when you're faced with a hardship and you seek to understand it, when you seek to look at different ways you can control it versus letting it control you, as Viktor Frankl said, you own the distance between stimulus and response. Initially, that takes a lot of discipline to do, to
Right.
stop yourself from dissociating, make sure that you're present, be conscious in your decision making. But eventually that just becomes you.
Mm-hmm.
You are just someone who is stoic.
Right.
And I come back to, like, people will often say that I'm unemotional or that I'm like kind of hard, but I'm not. If you speak to anyone who knows me, they know that I care very deeply for everyone that I meet. I try to give as much of myself to others as I can. And like, dude, whenever I send bulk messages to all the clients, what does it end with? It ends with, I love you all,
Mm-hmm.
because I do. And that to me is the essence of Stoicism. It's rising to having the identity of someone who is wise, brave, just, and temperate. How have you used these teachings to improve your life? Let's go with that, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
losing your brother is a huge deal,
Right.
but through that hardship came so much growth on your part.
Right. I have always been a very angry person
Okay.
for one reason or another. And I mean, it's not something that I'm happy about or sad about. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point I realized I can't live like this because it's not healthy. It
Right.
really, really is not healthy. That's where the temperance part comes in. It's like you need to be able to sit back and take a deep breath and give yourself some kind of mental reset before you do something that you're not going to want to do, that you can't take
Mm.
back. And I have had relationships where we've all said the wrong thing or something like that. But I feel like every relationship's a practice relationship until you meet the person that you're going to be with for the rest of your
So
life.
true.
And I had made mistakes out of not thinking, not like not thinking clearly, but like, you know, certain responses or something like that, that not that it ended anything, but it's like, you know what, man, maybe that wasn't the right thing to say, or maybe that wasn't the correct way to go about this. And how can I fix that? And I'll be the first one to say I'm totally fine being open and honest with this. I go to therapy usually once every 2 weeks or something, and I
Yeah,
like it
same.
a lot.
Every month. Yeah, I
It's
love I
it's
love therapy.
it's phenomenal because in my profession it's very taboo to talk about it, but I like doing it because I get to give somebody this what's going on in my life, and they can give me some unbiased feedback. They eventually
Mm-hmm.
get to know me very well, and it's like, just tell me how it is. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? What can I do to improve? And I get some tools to go ahead and fix it.
But even
And
that, I'm gonna push back, because
mhm,
nothing is right or wrong. It
that's
just
true.
it just is, man.
It just is, right?
Yeah.
It's all perception,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like perception within the given moment. Um, but I've done a lot of reflecting over the past couple of years as far as the whole anger thing is concerned. And you can get caught up in a situation that you're at, whether it be a work environment, a home environment, or something, and things can slowly delve into this hole that you don't realize you're in until you're too deeply into it. And I think that's why it's very important to be able to step back and realize, like, hey, I'm not me. I haven't been myself lately. Why?
Mm-hmm.
It might not be me. Maybe it's the people that I'm surrounding myself with. And I've had that happen before too in the past few years. I'm not going to say where, but like there have been situations where there were some toxic people around that I was not happy with. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized I was kind of losing my edge in a sense.
Yep.
And there's this whole like oh, I'm not going to give up. It's a pride thing, right? But like, no, there's no giving up and running away. That's not a thing when it comes to this. Like, you really just got to give a shit about yourself. Like, that's something that I've realized in the past, really in the past, like 4 or 5 years. That's really big. Yes, I do give a lot. I would like to think that I do, but I think it's very important to really care about yourself and say, hey, look, like, I got to take a mental health day, or like, I can't do this right now. Saying no is a skill.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Saying, because how many times when you're younger did you say, like, yeah, sure, I'll go, and you regretted going because you didn't want to not get invited again next time? You know,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
but the people, and you'll know this too, like, you probably had this friend group when you were, I don't know, 20, and then like when you're 25 it gets smaller, when you're 30 it gets smaller, and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But the whole time the people that really gave a shit were just this small amount of people right here. And if you narrow it down to these people, like, they're never going to go anywhere, no matter what you say or do, as long as you live by these good values. If they're the same type of person as you, they're never going to go anywhere. They're not going to judge you for, he didn't go out last time or something, or he doesn't want to drink with me. No, they respect you for who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very, very introspective thing that I had to realize for myself, because you don't have to please anybody. You don't have to show up for anybody but yourself. You need to show up for yourself, because if you don't, someone else is going to own you.
Mm.
And that's not a good way to live.
Yeah, I think stoicism for me has also helped me to seek a lot of clarity into the decisions that I make. And saying no is a really interesting concept, because especially in business, you find yourself operating from either a position of abundance or a position of scarcity. So if you're saying yes to everything, it's because you fear that there will never be another opportunity. So it's like, oh, I have to say yes to taking on this shit client, or I have to say yes to getting on this podcast I don't want to talk to somebody on. Like, and I did that in the past. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not this podcast, because I choose the guests, so it's awesome. But I've taken podcasts with other people where I was like, I shouldn't be on this thing. This does not resonate with me as a person. I don't like this
Right.
podcaster, whatever it might be. But when you're able to say no and take ownership over your own time and your own energy, that's a
Mm-hmm.
really powerful place to operate within.
Right.
Saying no also comes with understanding their reasoning behind it. So one of my favorite things to do for people is just reframe the way that they use language. And I first started thinking about this a couple years ago, where like language is essentially the word picture that we paint about reality. So if I say something like, oh, this was good or bad, I'm attaching a meaning to that thing that may or may not be true. It could have been more detrimental than it was good, but there's still a good element in any decision, because even with that podcast, I said yes to the podcast. It may have helped my career, it may have gotten me another client, but maybe it clashed with my values. So you have to, everything is a cost benefit equation. So
Right.
nothing is good or bad. We make it so, as Buddha would say.
Right.
But in exploring saying no and taking ownership of your time, what you're really saying is, I'm sorry, I cannot prioritize that right now.
Yes.
That, to me, speaks from a place of deep understanding of self. Because when you know your priorities, those have to align with your values. And if you have a true understanding about your values, now you can architecture a life that has alignment across everything.
Right.
And that was, to me, that was the biggest click of like, I do such a great job of educating myself. I do such a great job of seeking wisdom and learning, seeking to understand. When I think about wisdom in the Stoic sense, I think about wisdom of self, like true self understanding.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about bravery, I think about taking action that aligns with my wisdom. Because a lot of instances where people think they're being brave, they're actually being really, really cowardly,
Right.
like fighting, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm going to kick his ass. I'm going to be brave and I'm going to step up to this guy. It's like, no, actually, in that decision, you're acting against your values. So you're being a coward,
Right.
which brings up integrity, as you mentioned. And then justice for me, doing what's right. I think it starts with doing what's right for yourself. And a lot of my, we'll say, my core values on the way that I live my life center around being very selfish. And are you familiar with Ayn Rand?
No.
Oh, brother. I'm
Mm.
going to send you a link to a book that you need to read
Please.
ASAP. So one of the books that it was one of the books that I read during this very challenging time. It's called Atlas Shrugged. So the premise of the book is this family owns a railroad company, and the government is acting in ways that don't align with industry, and all the productive people in the United States go on strike. They just disappear. And so what happens is when productivity drops, the world comes to a halt. And the only thing left is this railroad.
Hmm.
The premise of the book is all about self-ownership and accountability, doing what's right, doing what aligns with your values. And Ayn Rand wrote another book called The Virtue of Selfishness, which essentially boils down to, if I don't do what's best for me, society will crumble. She's a very stark capitalist, and a
Yeah.
lot of her like economic framework doesn't necessarily hold water in real life.
Right.
But I think all of us could stand to be a little bit more selfish,
Yeah. 100%.
because you can't pour from an empty cup.
No, you can't. And I was having this conversation with my wife the other day. She had what was it? It was a girls' night with, I think, four or five of them total. And she had a lot of stuff to do for her business. She held an event last Saturday, and it was like Thursday night. And she says, "Hey, like, if I go to this, like, I don't know if I'll have enough time to get all this stuff done."
Right.
And I said, "All right, then don't go." And she's like, no, just don't go.
Yeah.
You think they're going to be mad at you? Whatever, don't go." And she goes, she's kind of throwing it around. Like 20 minutes later, she's like, "Okay." And then she goes, "Wow, like all the other girls are kind of dropping out too." And I'm like, "See how that easy that was? Like nobody's going to get mad at each other because now nobody's going." Like, what, you know? And if you do things like that, if you always say yes, if you are continuing to not look out for yourself, that can easily be a recipe for being resentful to the exact people that you think are going to be upset with you, but they're not. That's just in your own head. So now you're getting upset with them just because you don't want to control your own life. Kind of.
Dude, resentment is something that I'm very familiar with. Um, Talking about that, dark time in my life. I think resentment is the price you pay for unspoken expectations not being met.
100%.
So any relationship that you enter into, whether professional, romantic, business, if you're not saying exactly what you expect of that person, and then they don't live up to these unmet expectations, you're essentially making an agreement with yourself to be upset.
Yes.
And then if we dial into like, okay, well, if I'm upset about something, this other person who I'm upset with, me being mad doesn't affect them at all. So I forget who said it, but it's like anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah. I mean,
And that like that resonates with me so deeply. So like I don't even worry about getting angry.
yeah.
I just look at it and say, hey, I didn't do a great, again, self-ownership. I didn't do a great job communicating my expectations here. I can't be mad that they didn't live up to them. Next time I can communicate better, and then I'll avoid this situation entirely, and I'll probably get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I think a conversation like this is so important, whether it be about Stoicism or whether it be about like the way in which this practice impacts the rest of our lives, is I think a lot of people, whether it be in business or in training or in nutrition, fail to truly understand why they're actually doing what they're doing. They don't have a deep understanding of what their values are, which leads them to a very poor allocation of priorities, which leads them to making decisions that don't align with what they actually want.
Right.
And that over time builds resentment with one person and one person only, yourself.
Right.
when you're going through this process of self-improvement, do you find yourself in a position where you judge yourself for inaccurate decisions?
Yes.
How do you overcome that?
I mean, obviously, you're not going to do the right thing every time.
No one.
I would say it's like a 50-50. So half the time, I'll be able to take a step back and be like, you know what? It's fine. Like, you make mistakes. And something that my therapist has told me, like, have grace for yourself.
Yep.
Right. Like, one of the things that I'll get to the other 50%, but one of the things that we talk about is a simple, like, do you get pissed at people on the road? Like, I don't have road rage, but it's like somebody cuts you off. You're like, oh, this mother, I got to see what this asshole looks like. And you fucking pull up next to him and you stare at him, you know.
You're racial profiling right now, aren't you?
Right. No, not even, dude. No, it's like, I just want to like look at this guy in the face and be like, oh, you may be angry, but like, there is literally nothing good that's going to come from that ever in any situation. So if I ever do that, which is very rare now, I'm like, you know what? That's fine. Have grace for yourself. People fuck up. Because what I do, or what I like to do most of the time, is like, well, maybe he's got somewhere to go. Maybe he didn't see me. Maybe I was in his blind spot. You know, just create a story for that other person, because you're going to have grace for them. And you know what? Maybe they are an asshole. But like, if I don't tell myself that, then I'll be okay with it. Mm-hmm. Like that's one of the biggest things. The other half of this, when I am unable to bring myself back, is usually when I lean on the person that I can always count on. And that's my wife. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, I feel like I fucked up, or I feel like I could have done this better. And she'll always say, okay, why? And I was like, well, because I should have done this. And she's like, well, like, you're human. You make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not perfect. And I think just something as simple as that is something like, how can I be mad at myself if the person that I love most and that loves me most is not mad at me, upset with me for anything? Like, there's no reason for that. And usually I'll kind of come back from being upset.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in data. So, being as pragmatic as I am and having the approach that I do, I often look at the decisions that I make and the outcomes that I get from those with a very neutral filter and say, what data does this give me? An example would be, I, like many of the clients I work with, have struggled with disordered eating behaviors. From an early age, I grew up as a fat kid, had a ton of trouble managing my nutrition, dealt with some binge eating. And then around age 30, I did my first actual diet where I got super lean. And that's when I started it got a little bit worse at that point, because I was like, oh, I can't lose my abs. And, the first time I've had them, whatever.
Yeah.
But even now, when I look at a situation in which maybe I've overindulged and I've continued to do that, let's say for an evening, there's giving myself grace for me is just avoiding the judgment piece. So it's not, I don't forgive myself for doing it. It's just, okay, today your stomach hurts, your digestion is trash. Was that decision the right one for you in the moment? Well, I was stressed. It made me feel good and it was delicious. And I got to enjoy time with my wife that was really valuable to me. We bond. One of our favorite things to do is go for food. So, but here's the thing. If overindulging in food, the payoff from that is a better connection with my wife and more quality time.
Right.
That could potentially be worth the GI distress, the bloating, the issues the next day.
Right.
So that same instance of overindulgence could have been the right decision to make in that moment at that time. But maybe in a different occasion,
Right.
it could have been the wrong one.
The box of donuts at night because you were emotionally eating was not good, but eating the same type or amount with your wife for a good purpose is okay.
Yep.
Same thing, different
Exactly.
reason.
So,
Yeah.
and this comes back to wisdom. It comes back to consciousness of your
Mhm.
decision making, understanding the trade offs involved. So, your trigger or your cue to re engage comes from you having your wife to bounce ideas off of, or you having your therapist to bounce ideas off of.
Mhm.
For me, I like to work with my clients in certain ways to establish strategies that kind of build in those stop gaps for them. So, one of my favorite ones is when you feel yourself starting to engage in a behavior that you don't want to continue. So, you don't want to establish a habit,
Right.
set a stopwatch for 10 minutes. So if you feel yourself, say you've had one donut and you find yourself reaching for a second and it's not something that you want to do, set a stopwatch for 10 minutes and think about the decision you're about to make. If you still want to eat that donut in 10 minutes, fucking go eat that donut. But that 10 minutes gives you the opportunity to reflect.
It does.
Another option is maybe before you eat that donut, you journal in your book for 5 minutes about what you're feeling in that moment or whatever it might be. Something that creates a stop and a
Right.
reflection. And then eventually, you don't need the stopwatch. You don't need the journal. You're able to be conscious in your decision making, understand your context, understand the trade offs, and then you're able to move forward. To me, that's stoicism. It's being wise, it's showing temperance, but it's also being brave to face your demons,
Right.
to face these habits, to face these things that you might deem as being bad. But at the core of it, let's use your anger, for example. Maybe this is a tough example to get into, but at some point, your anger was actually a positive adaptation. It protected you from something.
Right. Right.
So we have to understand that nothing is good or bad. So
Right.
you giving yourself grace for getting angry is just you taking the time to reflect on why you were angry, whether it was validated, and maybe what you could do better next time to avoid that pitfall.
Mhm.
Um, and none of this would be possible without stoicism, like without me
Right.
diving in and actually fucking realizing how misaligned I was. You know, when I hear when I read quotes about like from Stoic philosophers, I like to think deeper into it. So,
Right.
something I was gonna pull up your Instagram and go through some quotes, but when I read quotes about understanding yourself is true freedom and stuff like that, it's like, man, like you can't understand the way that you interact in the world unless you understand yourself.
100%.
Do you feel that who you are has changed since adopting this sort of philosophy?
Yes, I feel like it has. Um, the short answer, yes. The long answer would be it's this ever evolving thing
Mm-hmm.
that's become who I am. And as you were talking about, you know, some of your past experiences and how you work with your clients, I'm thinking to myself, like, well, maybe when the day comes to where I will not be here any longer, I will have achieved enough wisdom that would make me proud of everything that I've done.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I'm not proud now because I'm very happy with everything that I've achieved and I'm kind of soaking in it at the moment. But I know that there's so much more to achieve and so much more to learn and so much more wisdom to obtain.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I want to be the guy that, like, you know, everyone's going crazy. It's do not seek the fly will come to you. No, like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being so confident in you and your reactions and how you're going to respond to things that there's not a doubt in your mind that you're going to say the wrong thing when your kid does something fucked up,
Oh my God.
because you are so in tune with yourself that you've worked so hard that it's like this natural thing. Like you're talking about discipline. It's your identity at this point to be able to be like, huh. Like my dad, for instance, they had us when he was like, I think they were 36, 35, 36. So like when I was 10, 11, so that would make them in their mid 40s. I feel like in 10 years, am I going to be as wise as my dad was when he was giving me advice when I was 10? I don't think so, but I think that's just a perception thing,
Yeah.
right? It's
He
like,
was figuring it out along the way too.
dude, everybody, Chris Williamson?
Of course.
He's like, yes, dude, it's idiots all the way to the top. Nobody knows what they're fucking doing.
Yeah,
And it's
no.
100% true. Like there are things that I reflect on that I'm like, oh yeah, my dad could work on that. But there are also things that like, I'll call him for advice still. And he gives me like this great, like fatherly, like, everything. And here I am, a 37-year-old man, like I'm not a dad yet. I hopefully will be one soon, but like, I'm going to have to be able to step into that role someday. And I hope that when the time comes, like I have the right words to say. So this is another reason that I'm trying to adopt this persona and this mindset. And I think I'm not going to say I think, right? I got to put it out there. Like I know I'm doing a good job at it, but there's always room to improve.
Oh
There
yeah,
is
there
absolutely
always will be
always
room
room
to
to
improve.
improve.
Yeah, the parenting context is one that resonates with me deeply because I want my kid to be able to feel his feelings. I don't want him
Right.
to grow up not understanding why he's angry, why he's sad, why he's happy. And I want him to be able to actually make decisions that are true to him.
Right.
And if I can be the sounding board for him to go through that process and figure that out, man, that's such an important mentorship role. And, coming back to therapy, like one of the biggest things that I rely on for therapy, and this isn't like the normal podcast that we do. It's just, I think that's just a topic that I think needs diving into because people need to understand more about themselves.
Right.
But for me, the biggest payoff that I get from therapy is that in the majority of the relationships that I'm in, I'm the big brother. I'm the mentor. I have very
Yeah.
few people in my life who I can speak to as a peer. And when I speak with my therapist, I know that I'm getting an unbiased reflection of the information that I provide her.
Right.
And so it kind of lets me poke holes in my own thought process so that I can go in and fill them. And to me, that is the true value of therapy. I don't have, when I started therapy, man, I panic attacks every day. There's a period where I lost 13 pounds in a week just because I was so anxious and not eating.
Right.
But that's not my reality anymore, but I still use the same tools I did back then. And I think if we allow ourselves the grace to not judge and to actually seek to understand the world around us and how we interact with it, we actually can be where our feet are. And I think
Yes.
developing that presence is so, so important. That's something that I ask myself a lot. We went to Greenville this past weekend to just explore the city because we were thinking about moving there. And there were a few instances. I had a really big meeting this morning, and I was thinking about that meeting while we were walking downtown to Greenville. And I was like, hey, man, you're not where your feet are right now. And just that nice little reminder, I was like, oh, wow, this place is beautiful. And it took me back.
It's like, how many times do you see people on their phones? I live in a beautiful place, right? I got the ocean. That's like seriously a 5-minute bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
And like the amount of people that I see just on their phones and stuff when I go down there, even if they live down there, that's fine. But like, dude, you just go down there and sit on the sand and like leave your phone in the car.
Oh, dude,
like,
I'm so good at leaving my phone places. Like our trip to Europe, I think I took 5 pictures because
really?
Liv takes all the pictures because I know that if I'm on my phone, I get dragged away from
Do
reality.
you leave it on purpose?
Well, it's usually in my pocket, but it's on Do
Yeah.
Not Disturb.
Okay, so I was gonna say I'm so good at leaving my phone places, but that's just because I fucking forget shit all the time. And
Yeah.
like I just like, where's my phone? I don't have it. Oh, I got yeah. You said something there, man. It was like kind of on the tip of my tongue, and I was like, I want to save this because it's something that kind of makes sense to me. But maybe it'll come back to me. If not, I'll text it to you and figure it out
All
later.
right. Yeah.
What one of the things that I wanted to touch on too, I don't know how much more time we have left, but one of the things I wanted to touch on is you talk about discipline becoming your identity.
Mhm.
Um, I think that obviously, like you through life, you have this motivation, right? That's the starter for you,
Mhm.
and then discipline kind of becomes ingrained in you, and then identity is kind of like the final form of that.
Yeah.
Um, there are things that people will call, my wife likes to say these, the non-negotiables. What are
Yeah.
your non-negotiables every day? And it's like, I will not go a day without these things. And it's not like every day, right? It could be like your weekly non-negotiables or something. But
Yeah.
like there are certain things that you will not compromise for.
Mhm.
And I feel like those are the things that truly define what you're disciplined in.
Mm.
So I try to think of like, what are what are my non-negotiables, and it's like it's difficult to say like, oh, I got this and that, I'm quantifying everything, but like for me, i try I try really hard to understand and use my wife's love languages, because
Mm.
to me that's a non-negotiable in my life.
Yeah.
And we are a little bit different. Like for me, neither one of us are gift receivers or anything. Like even for Christmas, like I don't think we're gonna do anything, and we're it's totally fine. But she is an acts of service person.
Okay.
So when I do things like I come home from work in the morning, she's already been at the gym. She gets up at 4. She's at the gym, whatever. If the dishwasher's empty, if the house is like cleaned up a little bit, so if the dog's already been on a walk, those are things that she loves and she cares about.
Mhm.
And I feel like if I can integrate that type of discipline into my life and use those as my non-negotiables, like that's going to make her that much more happy, and it's going to solidify our relationship just that much more. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so those things,
There also has to be non-negotiables that you do for yourself,
there
right?
absolutely are. Yes.
Those daily non-negotiables, like for me, is movement. Like I have to do some
Mm-hmm.
sort of movement every day. I have to
Right.
sit quietly every day. Just
Mm-hmm.
even if it's 5 minutes, I have to just sit
Right.
quietly. I used to journal every day. I still do a lot of writing, but it's more so like planning, reflection, and that is a sort of
Yeah.
catharsis for me. Um, but again, same deal. It's like, non-negotiable that my wife doesn't go a day without knowing how much I care about her. Right.
Yeah.
Those types of things that we do for others, I think can also be non-negotiables. But whenever you're talking about those non-negotiable things, I have to bring them back to your priorities and values.
Yes.
If you have to have a clear understanding of your priorities and values to know what's non-negotiable for you to maintain them.
Right.
And that's a selfish act, right? And that's totally
Mm-hmm.
okay. Um, I do like to finish the podcast with a question that I ask all my guests. If there was a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to read while they drove by, and you could put anything you want on it, what would it say?
I guess coincidentally, it would be the biggest tagline I use for the brand, and it doesn't even have to be attached to my brand, but I just want people to see it. And for me, it's stop existing, start living.
I love it. I
Because
have that.
most
I have the
people,
sticker on my desk.
I love that, man. And I mean, it's so simple, right? But most people are really simply just existing, and they're not truly living their life. And I was doing that for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and not not any longer. I like to pose the question: what will you be thinking on your deathbed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know about you, but I'm not going to have any, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. That's it.
Yeah. There was a podcast I was listening to. You know who Rick Rubin is, the music producer?
Yeah. Yeah. That guy's a brain, man.
Oh, he's super brainy.
Beautiful mind.
He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I'd never listened to anything that he did. But I ended up reading his book as a result of this, which is a fantastic book. He told a story about how they had just built this brand new house. He had just published his book, and their kids were grown, still living in the house. But the fire alarm started going off. And his wife got up, was like, "Hey, you got to get up. The house is on fire. The house is on fire." He's like, yeah, whatever. And so his wife had escaped the burning house. And turns out he got stuck and he thought he was going to die. And in that moment, he realized that he had achieved all of his life's goals. He had a family. He had a beautiful home. He had published a ton of amazing music, impacted a generation, wrote his book. That was like his, culminating thing that he did professionally was this book. And he was like, if I die, my family's safe. I impacted the world. I'm okay to die.
Yeah.
And I actually listened to that podcast. I was like a week out from my first bodybuilding show. I was in the dog park with the dogs, and I just like bawled my eyes out, because in that moment I realized, I was like, man, like I have a beautiful wife.
Yeah.
I live the life that I want to live. I do things on my own terms, and I live a life of service to others.
Mm-hmm.
If I died today, my legacy would be pretty fucking cool. And could I do more? Absolutely.
Right.
But in that moment, I was like, huh.
But in the grand scheme of things, like that's just a few simple things that make you happy and whole.
Dude. And I was
right? It's not like this deep, complex stuff. It's just these very basic needs that make us whole.
Yeah. Dude.
He's very fortunate for that, because you can't simulate a near-death experience. You can't fake it to truly be able to reflect on something like that. So it's very cool that by proxy we can reflect on our own lives and be like, man, this dude, I kind of got it pretty good too.
There's another cool. You brought up Chris Williamson, so he has a few quotes that I really love. One of them is the secret you're looking for is in the hard work you're avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
And the answers you're looking for are in the silence you're avoiding. And then the last one, it's escaping me right now, but it essentially boils down to the most important moments in your life wouldn't even register on a calendar.
Yeah.
So like the beauty of every moment, and the only way that you get to experience that is to be present in your own life and start living.
Right.
Dude, I love it. Dude, I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me, man.
Thanks for having me, dude. Yeah, it was something else.
I'm excited to hear the feedback on this one, because it's a little bit outside the norm of the Coach's Corner University podcast. But I think, a lot of young professionals deal with, I always believe that business is a direct reflection of you as a person. Right. What your values, your priorities are going to be reflected in your brand. And if you don't have a clear understanding of those, you really are handcuffing yourself for the future. So hopefully this conversation allows people to reflect a little bit more. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, dude. I'm looking forward to the feedback too.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, bro.